Well, welcome to the Words with Friends podcast. Tonight we have a phenomenal topic of discussion with the friends. Tonight we're going to talk about honoring thy father and mother.
Yes.
So I am John.
I'm Beth.
I'm Laura.
I'm Brian.
So hang tight and we will be right back. I know, contrary to popular belief, we are not professional podcasters.
Professional amateurs.
We are professional amateurs.
But we come with a big heart
We
and
do.
so much ready to share with all of you out there listening. So again, this is the Word with Friends podcast. We're so excited to talk about. See, I'm redoing the intro again just in case. How are you guys doing? How was your holiday? Thanksgiving.
It was
It was great. It was great.
We haven't been together since then. We
Yeah.
took a little
Yeah.
hiatus.
So
Definitely.
we did Thanksgiving. We have the honor thy father and mother topic here. We had mom and dad over, and then we had his mom and dad over.
Moms and dads.
So my moms and dads, taking care of moms and dads. And,
Nice.
you know, something that in our 40s we're doing more and more of, you know,
Yeah, that's
like
awesome.
as
Yeah.
mom and dads get older, we do take care of them, and that is part of that honoring thy father and mother. It says it's a commandment in Exodus, Exodus 20 verse 12, part of the 10 commandments. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. So, and I know that's reiterated in Ephesians. Beth, did you have that pulled up?
I do. It's Ephesians chapter 6. And in verse 2, it says, honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise. So it's referring back to that section. Yeah, huge, big deal. Share with us what happened on Thanksgiving. How did you honor your father and mother with?
Well, I wouldn't say we honored them on Thanksgiving per se. We honor them in things that we do in general.
I mean, the meal was, I think it was a blessing to them, to both sets of parents. Definitely, you know, they got to talk to each other and have a good time. You know, my dad and Laura's dad catch up and stuff like that. And you know, they're both, you know, again, same generation. They both served in the military during the Vietnam era, whereas Laura's father was in active combat. My father was not. So, you know, they talk about, you know, old guy stuff. You know? But it's good to see them get, you know, so often you hear the almost a trope of, you know, you know, the husband hates the mother-in-law, or the wife's parents hate the husband, or vice versa and stuff. But we really don't have that. We have that blessing that both sets of parents get along, and it's just communal there. But more recently, what brought this topic up is that my parents are getting older, and they have a lot of property, and they needed like a tree trimmed off their roof. And we went over there, and you know, we were talking about it, and you know, as we're, you know, I'm up on a ladder cutting stuff down, and Laura's helping break it down and put it into barrels and stuff so they can have their trash collectors pick it up. And you know, I don't remember what you said. I thought you said something like, "Hey, you know, we're doing something good or whatever."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, this is part of, you know, honoring thy father and thy mother." You know, my parents are not believers, but they still raised me well enough to the point where I could get born again.
Yeah.
You know? And I don't ever forget where I come from. I try to always remember, because they're not the same faith. But it's just, I have that heritage, if you will, and I try to honor that as much as I possibly can. You know, we have holidays together, and we try to remember that, you know, we pull in pieces of that culture, you know, for our parents to honor my parents. You know, we bring in some traditional food that might be, that's, you know, Jewish for our meals and things like that, and just different kind of things to bless them, because they were there for me my whole life, and they took care of me, and they didn't give me a very hard time when I made life decisions. They try to set me on the right path, and they see that we're successful. They see that we have wonderful, healthy children that are intelligent, successful. So just want to bless them back.
Well, and in blessing your parents, honoring your parents, I call my mom every day. You text your mom every day. Sometimes for some people it might be every week or whatever it is to stay in touch. My parents, again, are older too. They used to invite us over to their house a lot for dinner. That used to be our meeting place. But Mom's doesn't really like to cook these days, especially for, the family. And so I've taken that on. So once a week, I always make it a point to have Mom and Dad over for dinner at my house. So that is one way that I honor them. And again, calling them every day, it doesn't have to necessarily be big gestures, but like in the daily gestures of calling, checking in. I love you, Mom. How's Dad doing? All that.
From Ephesians chapter 6, that verse that I read earlier, the word honor, the definition of that outline of biblical usage is to estimate or fix the value. So we're recognizing the value, that's honoring someone. For the value of something belonging to oneself, to honor, to have in honor, to revere, or to venerate. And I think about another place where this is used, and it's in, let me pull it back up, Romans 12:10. Where it's talking about the household, it's talking about believers one with another, and it says, be kindly affectioned one to another with brotherly love. So that's that phileo love, the Greek word from the Greek word Philadelphia, brotherly love, in honor, preferring one another. And that preferring is seeking it first or putting it before other things. And I know with us, we were just talking about this, and it's not everybody in this new generation that's coming up, but we've seen the honoring of the father and mother just kind of pushed aside more and more recently.
Yeah.
And, people are not, again, this all goes back to the walk in love, really, whether it's for your parents, whether it's for, your family members, your friends, whatever, just being kind to people. But the honoring part, I just feel like as a society, we're kind of getting away from it. And I think it needs to come back. I think the respect for mom and dad need to be there. We talk about it all the time. I would have never in a million years talked to my father or my mother the way some of these kids treat their parents. And, especially with reference to your mom, you adored your mother. He did everything in his life, even as an adult. To please her, to make her proud, there's just no sense of that. I think that's being lost among society.
I think there's, in some respects, again, going back to biblical principles, that what you read in the commandments, the ideals was that as generations would progress, honoring thy father and mother would be to honor the things that they taught you, and not necessarily the traditions, but the traditions rooted in the traditions of family and all those kinds of things. But taking those biblical principles, the things that I stand upon as your parent, showing you how to live biblically, believing in God, the whole thing. That in turn, my dream and my hope is that as a parent, you do the same, and then you, with your children, do the same, which honors me by saying what you taught me as a child meant something and is now rooted and grounded in it. It's not just our last name. Right. We talk so much about the carrying on of names and having male, female, that kind of thing, but how you keep that honoring that name is that continues in the traditions. Like you said, I come from a mixed family too, so we had Mexican food, white people food, all that kind of stuff. So it was such a we had Filipino relative, all of it. It was just such a collective embracing of everyone's culture, but respecting, and there's the big word, respecting of it. So I think, by you going and doing some yard work and stuff, I can only imagine your parents sitting back thinking to themselves, we did something right.
We did good.
Our kids are here and they don't mind helping us out.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure
I mean, I
you felt
did.
blessing of that, like, oh my gosh, this is my time to honor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I know that at least in this, it seems like mine. Just doing some tree trimming is minimal, but my parents are very much yard people. Like they're out in the yard. My mom loves to have her hands in the dirt, and it kills her that she can't do it right now. She just doesn't have the physical acumen at this point to do it, and so they were very thankful for that. And so I did tell them there was a bill in the mail. So I mean, I did send them photos, but to which my dad returned and said, "There's a check in the mail too." So
It's made of rubber.
Yes.
So, yeah, you had mentioned that it's being lost in our society, and we're all part of a generation, and it just continues. So, our parents taught us to respect them, and we in turn, teach our kids to respect us. But a lot of parenting in the last maybe few generations, maybe like last couple, the parent wants to be loved over being honored, so they teach
Right.
or they do things to try to gain love from the
or
child,
liked.
They want to be buddies.
Friendship.
Well, there's
not
that
even love.
slippery,
Yeah.
there's that slippery slope of where some because I know that there are some parents, you've even
Mhm.
mentioned it, where there are things that attributes about some of the things your parents did in the way they raised you that you're going, I don't want to make that same mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
And
for sure.
sometimes and this happens, I think, in most of the things that we do in our societies, we overcorrect so much rather than just small little incremental corrections. And like, okay, my mom and dad, maybe were a little more a corporal punishment, which was not bad, and it wasn't all the time. And I'm going to in turn, do I need to do that, or can I find different routes to discipline? Although I'm just using discipline as an example.
Yeah.
But there are so many ways that some folks have so overcorrected that we've lost the respecting portion of that, which is it's okay. I feared my mom and dad in the respects of I didn't want to let them down.
Right.
That was the part.
Same.
I didn't fear them like I think they would do harm to me.
Well, I got the harm. I definitely got
you
harm.
got
I had that. I
generational. We
had
had the
fear.
same thing. Are
My
you
dad
okay?
was a cop, and he had
You
this
survived.
great big belt.
We had the belt too.
My mom
The
had a
belt.
meat hook. My mom had a meat hook and a baseball bat. And
Meat hook.
meat hook out in the garage. Yeah. So there was, in story, and again, I think it's hilarious. Now that I'm an adult, I know it was probably a fabricated story, but my father went along with it. Told big stories of my 3 foot, my 4'1" mom punching out a 7-footer, standing on a bar stool and punching the guy out. And I'm like, wow, mom, if mom can do that, it wasn't until you get to like your teen years, I'm like, I can almost take her, so. But you still
for sure.
honor and respect
Yeah.
that story. I didn't want to push it.
The biggest thing for me was I didn't want to let my mom down. My dad really didn't have much of a say with me growing up. He was just the disciplinarian, but my mom was the one that I was concerned about. I need to get good grades. I need to be in the choir. I need to, all these things. But then, you look at that, and I had that zeal to want to do that for my mom, but I wasn't taught to do that for God until I came to this knowledge of the truth that I have now, which is why wouldn't I? God is my father, God is my parent. Why wouldn't I want to do everything? Isn't that my reasonable service to him to do like Brian, you did because your parents first did for you. God first did for us. Wouldn't that be our response? And isn't that honoring God then?
But isn't it so much
by
like
carrying out his word?
The way we do it too is the reason your mom was probably doing is because your dad was like, this is how it needs to be done. The silent party, you didn't have any clue.
Right.
That was really an authority because he wasn't pushing his agenda on you, which is the way God is. He wants us to willfully do, not he didn't create robots. We have free will to do what we want to do
out of obedience and love and a genuine heart response.
Yeah, we don't.
Well, as when we were children, and if we were taught to honor our father and mother, they are our first what do I want to say, view of authority, you know,
Mhm.
and how are we going to learn how to honor God if we're not first honoring mom and dad?
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
when we're young, I think it would be, you know, not impossible, but much more difficult because you have an example, a living
Oh, yeah.
example.
Right.
So
And I'm sure that's why
it's,
God designed it that way.
Well, and
yes,
again,
yes.
it's why he calls himself a father. If you have kids who grow up in a household with a mother and a father, and then they have a father who sees, you know, who acts as he should according to the word, that's their physical representation
Right.
of what
Right.
God's word says in their life, and that's the impression that they're getting. They get that godly impression, and then it's that much easier to see it when they read it in the word about God being a father. Like, oh yeah, I mean, I get that. That makes it might make more of a connection, if you will. But
It's interesting to note that the word says honor thy father and mother. It does not say love thy father and mother.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
again, you know, mom and dad are the authority, but also human beings can be very complicated.
For
And
sure.
sometimes moms and dads can do things that are very unlovable.
Sure.
And sometimes love is very hard for people, but they can still honor. And
Right.
you know, I think that there's, you know, obviously there's some extreme cases where, you know, that's not even available, but you know, we all go through periods in life. You know, we were all like all about mom and dad when we were teenagers. You know, I mean, not that I actually I loved my mom and dad throughout, but I know that other people go through phases with their relationships with their parents, and you know, that's just part of life. So
Yeah.
and I do love mom and dad, but you know, that's not the commandment. Commandment is to honor them.
right.
Right.
Yeah, it was I know for myself, my relationship with my parents were I had a very good communicating relationship with my mother. My dad, because he was worked and did all these things, and I remember as a preteen and then into teen years thinking to myself, as I saw other fathers who had normal jobs and 9 to 5s and spend all their time hoops after work and shooting this and going to there. And I used to envy those kids because my dad worked overnight. So generally when I come home from school, he was sleeping. And so I grew up with this idea of what I thought who my dad was, and my relationship with him wasn't great. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. And it wasn't until I got older and then actually had kids of my own and saw the struggles of what it's like to try to parent and be a parent or even provide all those things that you go, oh my God, this is not easy. And there is no book to tell you how to do it right.
No.
I mean, and that's the thing. There is a book. I just didn't know that book.
Right.
I hadn't been shown that book.
Yeah.
And there's where, again, the great example why it's so early on in the book that he's speaking about this is because it's such a foundational biblical principle of honor, honoring, what, and again, what that entails, what that honoring means. Like you said, it doesn't have to be necessarily this end all be all love thing, but there's the honoring of it. So I honored my father throughout it, but I gained and earned love and respect for him when I was in turn facing the same things and went, wow, he sacrificed so much for me.
It's hard.
What was I thinking?
Yeah.
And it must have been hard for him too.
I'm waiting for that moment with my kids. I love my kids with all my heart. There are times, I mean, and two of my boys were raised in the word up until teen years. My daughter was introduced to it a little bit later. We weren't really practicing or attending a fellowship to where she could go. I mean, I was still applying principle at home and teaching her, but
sure.
She didn't really attend a fellowship until she was early teens. But there's a lot lost there. There are many times where I feel disrespected. I feel unhonored. And most recently it's really been affecting me. But what I have to understand is I'm not going to expect her or expect him or them, I should say, to do something for me. I want them to do it out of their own free will. Like God wants us to
Right.
react to
Yeah.
him. I don't want to say something that's going to make them feel bad and force them into, oh, we should probably go see mom. I don't
Mhm.
want that type of response. I think about that in light of God as well. These people who believe that God is testing them, or God is trying them, or God is putting all of these pressures in their life to draw them back. Come kids to me. I'm gonna put this on you, this weight on you, so that way you understand I'm the way to get it back off. That is not what he does. That is not what I would want to
Right.
do to my kids.
No.
No, what he
It's
wants
like setting up a circumstance to make him the hero, and it's like that's
for
not
sure.
Right.
What he's
that's
done for
not
us
godly. Yeah.
is
No.
he's made it available clearly throughout his word. He's made it, especially in what's written towards us specifically. He's made it very clear about, hey, there are gonna be tough times,
Mhm.
and the good news is that if you come to me,
Mhm.
you know what I've done and how I've set things up for you. What I want, my will for you is that you'll get through it,
Right.
that you will be victorious through whatever it is. And it's not the challenge that makes us tougher. It's that God has already taken care of us, that we can count on it.
Right.
It should make us tougher.
And I feel like I've been that to my kids.
Sure.
I feel like I've been a constant
As you
in their
stated, it
lives.
probably will be one of those situations, like for myself, where it's going to take, they're going to have to experience
A little bit of life and then
And
be
then
like,
really think.
oh,
That's all.
she did
Yeah,
know
that's-
what she was doing.
Well, that's perspective. Yeah, and that's perspective too. I mean, it's like anything else. Until that shoe is on, it's like having your own kids. You have babies, and you're like, man, how did you guys do this?
Yes.
I mean,
Right.
and then you're like, wow, I remember that when we had our first child, and we're talking to my parents, and like, man, I have a newfound respect for
What you did.
what you guys did. They raised, again, 3 kids who are only a couple years apart, with no internet and no, they didn't have. We had Sesame Street.
No tablets, no
Yeah,
headphones.
no, yeah, he had Sesame Street. That was about it. It was
Right.
Saturday morning cartoons, but other than that, and we were latchkey kids for the most part, so we did have to do some growing up. But it's like, they did a lot, and it was one of those things that, like, I know now that they went without a lot so that we could have a great holiday, so we could have all the Transformers and all the Star Wars
Yes.
toys and all that stuff, and the Nintendo when it was brand new, and all the gadgets and all that stuff. And we just thought, hey, this is cool. We never said boo about it, and our friends thought we were the rich people and stuff. I'm like, well, my parents went without a lot. They scrimped and saved and did without in many ways, so that we can have great holidays as kids and stuff like that. So
And
they
how-
put you first.
And how
Yeah.
beautiful is it that the outer appearance wasn't where you could see that
That they had struggle.
that
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't let
they
you in
kept-
on that.
and they didn't make
No.
you live a life of like, hey, listen, we're really, I don't know if I'm even gonna even be able
Thanks
to do
to
that for
you, we
Yeah.
can't afford anything.
None of that stuff.
No, they are phenomenal financial fiscally responsible people. Probably
And-
more so than any, because they had to be. They ran for my youth, they ran a Hallmark store. So there was times where, like,
Wow.
the holiday season's great. They're just making money hand over fist. But then you had the drought in the summer where there's nobody's giving out cards for summer.
Mother's
you know.
Day. It's Mother's
Yeah.
Day.
But again,
Yeah.
they
one.
would be times where they would make no money in a month, like $0, because they had to pay like the one person that worked at the store, and
in that
so they had to make
generation-
all that money and carry it. So yeah, there's so much there.
and that generation didn't have constant, hey, here's how you do it, here's how you parent, here's how
Yeah.
Oh
you
my God. for
Yeah,
sure.
which is what we're bombarded with every single day.
No YouTube
You
videos
know,
back then.
it was so
No.
much of like, those things weren't talked about. Like, I'm sure I would imagine maybe, because even parents, was your parents' friend group huge? I know my parents they got in a social club later in life, but other than that, it wasn't like they had, they were in the service with some, so I don't remember conversations like, how are you parenting? It was
No,
very like,
because
we
you
don't
would
talk
ask-
about that stuff.
You would ask your parents. When
Yeah.
you had kids, my mom would call her mom.
No.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah, that's what you would do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, my parents are I'm the introvert child of introvert people. So I mean, and my brother and sister are the same way. So
Possibly more so.
possibly more so. Yeah, I'm like introvert light compared to the other siblings. But anyway, so well the thing is traditionally though, I mean again, looking at traditionally, you used to have
Bigger families.
well, you used to have grandma and grandpa living in the house helping raise children
Right.
too. And so,
True.
Right.
cultures and society,
For
it's
sure.
not so much here. We're like grow up and move out. You're like grow up and leave and move out, and then you can figure it out on your own. You kind of make your way as the world, if you will. But there was the time where you would have multiple generations. So like the grandparents would be teaching the grandkids for life principles while mom and dad are working or doing something. So there was that like handing that
Yeah.
network, that support network.
For sure.
Back in
It's
the
just
Willy
this-
Wonka days, they were sharing a bed.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, it kind of reminds me of how Timothy was raised. His mom taught him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And his grandmother, was it Lois? Who was his
Yes.
grandmother?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, you are correct.
Just and think about how the Christ line was maintained again due to honoring your parents, teaching those
Mhm.
principles. That's how that stayed alive for years and years
Hmm.
from the time of the fall with Adam up until
Right.
Mary got pregnant with Jesus. I mean, it was how many years, thousands of years, and we were still able to have that Christ line preserved because of people honoring their parents, honoring
And wow,
that truth.
let's talk about
I know.
honoring a parent. The job that Jesus finds he has to do, and then does the will of the Father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without,
Yeah.
there's honoring.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Truly.
Ruth is another great example of honoring your parents, your mother and your father and your mother. It wasn't even her birth
Right,
mother,
yes.
but she honored her mother-in-law.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Well, and I'm sure for
Yeah.
yourselves, like for me, my mom and dad are gone, unfortunately, and it sucks at times, especially during holidays. But I've cleaved onto a parental person figure that I have now in my life, Beth's dad. That his, I'm not saying is supplemented but
Taking the place of
substituted in any way. But I find myself honoring that he's your dad.
Mhm.
He
Mhm.
brought you in this world, and I honor what he's and how he's treated me, and I want to do for him as much as he's come and visits and does for us. And
Mhm.
it's that continuation, and I'm hoping again your children can see that. My children, I hope, can see that same thing, which is because unfortunately their grandparents are gone too, that they can see that there's it doesn't have to necessarily be blood. I'm sure
Yeah, for sure.
look at Paul and Phil in our fellowship. Such
Yeah.
wonderfully amazing people that I respect and honor the things
Yeah.
that they do and the examples that they are as people, and sometimes look at them parentally and other times peers, but a lot of times parentally.
Well, and that goes back to that verse in Romans about honoring and preferring one another.
One another, yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's such a huge thing. That honor has to do a lot with respect. I may not, have a family love for somebody, but I can respect the hell out of you for your walk, for what you do, for what you bring to the table, for your belief in God, for your encouragement, for your friendship. I mean, all of those things. I honor the two of you. I honor my husband.
I think it's wonderful also too that watching your children now manifesting and growing in the Word. It's so cool to see them. They're still who they are,
Right.
but
Yeah, for sure.
honoring and respecting that this is something that you've chosen as a family to do, and they are continuing it.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful to see.
Yeah. Keeping
We're
it alive.
super
Yeah.
blessed by those two.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's kind of an interesting dichotomy when you do try, and we taught them to honor us, especially when they were small, so they would continue now that they're teenagers. But now we, since they are older too, there is a friendship aspect growing in the family, as their interests come out and we have things in common and it's fun and whatnot. I love that, and I think they do too. I'm pretty sure they do.
Yeah.
But keeping that honor kind of like at the center is very important.
I think that there's a balance to be made with how you interact with your children. And I don't know if we've spoken on this in previous episodes, but I can't be best friends with my 3-year-old or my 5-year-old because there's so much learning that's going on at that age, because we have to be the authority to Laura's point. The parent is the first representation of authority. And if we're like, do what you want, have Cheez-Its for dinner, that's cool. Eat some Cheeto Puffs all over, wipe your hands on the couch, no problem. What are you teaching them about society? What are you teaching them? Like, okay, yeah, go play in traffic, it's cool. Or, go rob a bank, whatever. I'm just saying, as an extreme, you as parents, we have to teach those boundaries. And sometimes it sucks. Sometimes you're like, man, you feel like you're the bad guy all the time. But then they grow, when you do that and you're consistent and they do grow up, then we get to that point where they are, in their teens or later, older than teens and up, where they are becoming adults and becoming free thinkers. And then that you still have to be there for them as a parent. We had to teach our daughter how to drive. She got a driver's license today, by the way. Congratulations.
Oh, congrats.
So, yeah, spoiler alert. So she'll be driving more often. So she might. I'll have her shuttle at our fellowship and stuff like that. But
nice.
But it took discipline. It took training. It took each milestone kind of takes that. We have to step back into that. Step into that parental role. We can't just like suddenly switch off parenting and be friends all the time, because we have to be there today when those hard choices, like, what do I do in social interactions? What do I do if I go to a party and there's, alcohol? Or what do I do with this friend who seems to be, they notice a bad influence? We want to make sure that we teach them. Right. And then again, it's like each milestone is you're the parent. And then years down the line, they'll look back as a friend and say, wow, they come to the next milestone and they see the previous one, like, okay, cool. It just builds on one another. But in our everyday interactions, it's wonderful to have, young adults who are intelligent and witty and fun to be around. It is like having 2 more friends in the house and stuff like that. So.
The best phone calls that John and I get are from our kids when they're either asking us advice on something. I'm like, yes, the day that I've prayed for. Where you're actually asking me and I'm not have to telling you what to do. You are asking me. So that, and then any type of biblical questions. Like my daughter is super on board with God and the Word right now, which is great. Again, I set that foundation for her. She walked away from it for a bit. She's now back and she's like balls to the wall with this. And she is so excited to grow and learn. So she'll ask me questions. Those are the best phone calls to get.
Yeah.
I mean, it blesses us so much to have them come back and ask, what do I do here? And their life questions. We're not talking like just recipes or, how do I sew? It's like life stuff. And to me, that's a part of honoring, because they're recognizing that part of our wisdom.
Well, they wouldn't have asked you.
Right.
Yeah, they wouldn't have asked you. They'd be like, "Oh, you don't know nothing." Yeah, what? I'm not going to ask.
Well, there's times I get that response as well.
I'm sure there. Yeah, we all. Yeah, it was like. But you planted that seed a long time ago. It just took time for it to germinate, and they had to go through a lot of crap that just ultimately fertilized it. So now you're getting the benefits of that. But that takes persistence, and to your point, there might be times where it's not going to happen in, a year, 2 years, 10 years, half your lifetime, but there may come a point, and there's some things that they may never come back up to the surface. You're like, man, I put a lot of work into this thing, and they may never say, I really appreciate that. But if you see it living in their life. You see the decision, like you've helped move the course
Yeah.
of your child's life in a direction, and you see it down the line, you know. And I always chalk this up. This is the one thing I kind of fall back on, is like, if nobody sees the efforts that you put forth in this life, regardless if it's raising children or whatever, the behind the scenes stuff, if nobody sees that, God sees it.
That's right.
You know, God's written that on the book of your
Mhm.
life. You know, like I did this, I ran in this race, or I put forth this effort to do this. You know, I gave some spare change to this random person, or I did whatever. You know, you just added to the list of things that you just doing in life to make this existence a little bit sweeter, and whether it's for yourself or whether for somebody else, you know, and you never know. So with kids, it's kind of the same way. It's like you give out this advice, like spare change to strangers, and what do they do with it? You know, that they
That's
throw it
on
away.
them.
Yeah, that's their decision. But you've done what you're supposed to do. Again, as a parent, is to coach and to direct. And there comes a point where, you know, like I said, our kids are teenagers, but they'll come a point where it's like you're responsible for your decisions. I've done everything I can to guide you, for however many years, but know that I'm here should you have those questions. And to your point, Beth, they come back, in their 20s or 18, late teens, early 20s or mid 20s, and say, hey, what are your thoughts on this? And you're like, I've been waiting.
Right. That's exactly how I feel when I get the phone call. It's just, parents have such hard jobs. A mother's job, and I'm speaking from experience, super hard. It's super hard to manage the discipline. I was a single mom for a little bit, and it was hard being mom and dad. It was hard being the only breadwinner for my family. There were so many struggles that I had that maybe in my head, I felt like, man, I should win an award or something. I felt so accomplished for getting through it. And all I wanted my kids to see was she did good.
Well,
but you know what? They were my kids. That wasn't their job to recognize that. They were just, and I had to come to that realization for myself, which was, you know what, again, like you said, God sees, he knows what I did. Whether my kids ever see the sacrifices that I made or the things I did is not for me to decide.
You did such a good job that they didn't even notice.
Right.
That it was just one person doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
how good you did.
Yeah. And truly, it's like the stuff that I found out, like, with my parents, like I was saying earlier in the show, is that I didn't find that out till in my 30s or 40s. So it's like, that's 4 decades later that I find out what they went through to give us a great holiday and give us a great life as children. And we lived like the 80s childhood. We rode our bikes to the neighborhood and went fishing and did, maybe the country 80s version of it. But, we went, went fishing. We're out, home before
down to the creek.
Yeah,
down at the creek.
We'd collect the. No, I collected. I caught the small fish and then gave them to my brother, and he caught the big fish off the dock in the backyard. That's how.
We used to bring tadpoles home from the creek, and I would grow them in a fish bowl.
Yeah,
nice.
And then I had frogs. I've always loved frogs. Fun time. Did you want to say something? No. Oh, he's just listening to the stories. Yeah, father and mother, honoring them. Absolutely, all the respect. Are there bad parents out there? Absolutely. Are their parents probably not worthy of honor? Absolutely.
Well, and again, going back to that, was there intentions of being bad parents? Probably not. Because again, there's as we all know now, there is no book. It doesn't teach you how to do it right. And again, if you don't have this wonderful, amazing guidebook,
Word of God,
that you're utilizing in your life, it can be a struggle and it can be hard, which is why, again, for the listener out there, there are so many things about our lives that can become so much simpler and not easier, but simpler and more easier to understand by diving into this Word of God. And there are so many, if you're thinking about parenting in the future, if you're a young person listening, again, pick up the Word. There's so many great examples of how to parent. There's so many great examples of how to love a person, how to honor friendships, respect, strength, everything. There's so much available. So get into it.
Yeah.
And the thing is too is there's some good examples of what not to do.
Yes.
And there and
Sure.
Well, and in Ephesians, in the verse that reiterates the verse from the Ten Commandments, it says
Mhm.
in Ephesians 1, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise. It's the first commandment that had a codicil along with it, and then the promise is that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. So that's indicative of that is a promise that you as an individual will live long on the earth, but it also is indicative of a healthy society overall. If moms and dads are being obeyed and honored, then those children will grow up as functional citizens in a society, in a healthy society.
Yeah.
But then in the next verse, and ye fathers provoke not your children to wrath. So the word does take on like parenting, this is something not to do. Don't provoke them to wrath, and bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. So in Proverbs it says, spare not the rod, their discipline is important, and the rod doesn't mean we used a wooden spoon when the kids were little. Jacob got it on his calf a lot, and a little butt. This kid had such a hard head. I didn't use it on his head though. I used it on his calf and his thigh. Not thigh, I'm sorry. His butt. Dad had a belt.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. I hated the belt personally. I was a very straight-laced kid because I did not want the belt.
Same.
Sarah
I'm pretty
was
sure I still have.
Yeah.
I probably still have scars on my butt from that belt. Yeah.
Sarah was
Dad's
afraid
voice
of.
was enough.
Sarah was afraid of the wooden spoon, so she kept pretty straight-laced. But Jacob was a wild child, man.
Yeah. Sarah actually tried to advocate for him at times. She's like, she would be his intercessor for us. She's like, it's okay. He didn't mean that, guys. And like,
She really did too.
but yeah, she went to bat for him a lot.
Your dad is kind of scary, so I could see his voice
he had
being
the
very
booming voice and stuff, and he'd get mad and stuff. That was enough. I didn't need physical. I just got yelled at, get loud, and that was enough. I was like, okay, show's over. All right.
But it's not
Nothing to
to
see here.
be abusive in any way. It is to little kids need something that's going to get their attention, and guess what? A little bit of pain will get your attention.
Yeah, it doesn't say it doesn't.
It's not to be abusive at all.
It doesn't say
It goes.
break the rod over their head.
No.
And this flies in the face of all of the experts and all of what society. John, you keep saying there's no book. There's a bunch of books that are really bad.
Around
really
the
bad
70s,
parenting advice.
yes, so many started writing books on parenting that were terrible.
One
I believe was named after a Star Trek character. I hear that was a horribly bad book.
Yeah. So the rod, I remember, wasn't it the goad with the animals, and isn't that part of the example that's given in the word? When an animal pulling a cart or something was getting out of line, there would be a goad or a correctional thing that they would tap against the animal to keep it going straight. And I don't know where that's written, but that was the example that's given in the word. And that's really what the purpose of the rod is for, is to keep the kid or the child straight on the doctrine that is said. And clearly the doctrine we just read should be the nurture and admonition of the Lord.
Right.
So it's basically just a scoot on back now. Scoot on back now, you hear.
What was the verse with the bits in the horses' mouths?
The bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. Because that's a form of that's correction.
And again, it was the purpose of the bit in the horse's mouth is not to hurt.
Psalm 32:9.
32:9 maybe. Be ye not as the horse or as the mule, which have no understanding, whose mouth must be held with a bit, held in with bit and bridle, lest they come near unto thee. Is that what you're talking about? Psalm 32:9.
Or something. No,
They
Work
might have
on
been
it.
quoting Psalm 32:9.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I just searched bit real quick and got that one real quick on the Blue Letter Bible. So
Yeah. That's
But the,
what
but the
I was
idea of it was, again, going back to the correction, is that it's a lot of people could look at the way people would control animals, horses being one of
Mhm.
them, and a lot of supposedly it was cruel, and like spurs and different things like that. A lot of it was just to give slight nudges to the animal to correct position.
yeah.
And
Again, it's not to damn to
No.
hurt the creature or
No.
like
no, because many of those people that rode horses that utilized those tools loved their animal. They
Yeah, for
was their
sure.
best friend and knew that their whole life depended upon this animal, how
Right.
well it was trained.
Yeah.
And would follow directions. That is, their lives literally would depend on it.
Mhm.
Taking down horses down huge in
hillsides,
hill
and stuff.
grades that are just like 0% grade or whatever, and horses just going, okay, I'm following your lead, and be able to control themselves down and not kill the rider.
Right.
It's amazing.
Mhm.
right.
Well, and the correction we have for our kids is the same way. We don't want them
Gotta
out in the
love.
middle of the street in traffic. I mean, that's a
Exactly.
warning that we give them to protect their lives. And God's word has thousands of those warnings for our lives. Do this and this won't happen. Just obey.
Yes. It's so true.
Well, and
We as adults, yes,
Yeah.
we have God has a lot of that for
Yeah.
us.
And that's wonderful that he does it that way. God says,
Yeah.
this is how you're going to live the best life you can live. This is how you're going
Right.
to stay out of
Safe,
trouble and safe
peaceful.
and peaceful and out of the rain and out of the snow and out of all the garbage and all that stuff. This is how you do it. And you're like, I don't want to do it. He's like, okay, well, these are the consequences.
Mhm.
Because you can go this way, you can do that, but you will suffer. And that's a lot of times how the wrath of God is portrayed. It's like, this is
Right.
the right way to do it. The wrath of God is not him coming down and smacking you. It's that you have a path, and this is the best way to live. But if you choose to go someplace else by your free will, you're going to suffer the consequences of living. You're going to get wet if you walk in the rain.
Mhm.
Right.
And all you got to do is pop that umbrella up that you're carrying around with you.
Exactly. Yeah.
What is this
yeah.
umbrella for?
Like animal
Open doors with it.
Yeah.
Silly.
Yeah.
No, like open it. It'll cover you from the rain. Nah, I like to use mine as a
A sword. Yeah.
A walking stick. Yeah.
Stir
Yeah.
coffee with it.
Mm.
Yeah. It's parents are so important, man. Mothers, I give props to. Again, I am one, so I understand how it is. I have this relationship with my kids where I want to be their mom, but I also want to let them learn. It's such a tightrope that I walk on sometimes with my adult children, letting them make their mistakes and then just helping them when they've fallen, or how much advice is too much advice. I mean, it's still, they're adults. They don't live here. They've been out of the house. We've been empty nesters for years. I'm still dealing with how to talk with them and the advice that I give them and how much is too much. I don't want to steer their decisions. I want them to make their own decisions, but
Well, I mean, there's a great example of a parent giving a child just about every single thing they could ever think or want or need, and then that child going,
I'm good. I'll figure it out.
and then the honoring of the parent was like, well, I told you what would happen, so this is what happens.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and I understand what you're trying to say, though, with, you don't know how much advice to give. And yeah, I love my dad, but he has a tendency to sermonize. So
sure.
Don't be like,
Yeah.
don't be that. That's a bit much. It's like, okay, Dad, I got you. Yes. But I wanted to tell a story going back to the discipline and how bad books have been written and they're, I think, steering well-meaning parents in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So when Jacob was my wild child, and he was a hot mess. But he was a sweet kid. Love him. But very stubborn too. So during the potty training years, so he wasn't potty trained until after he was 3 fully. And every single article, every single book I read, don't spank your child when potty training. Don't do it. Don't do it. You're gonna mess them up psychologically, and these bad things will happen. They will resent you the rest of their life. It's just it's so many, all these warnings. Don't spank your child during potty training. And I didn't need to with Sarah.
Yeah.
It was fine. Now Jacob was like nearly 3.5, and it got to a point where like I knew he knew what to do. He just didn't want to. It's like, nah, I don't want to. You can change my diaper. I'm good. Like, I want to keep playing.
Yeah.
So finally, and we did every positive reinforcement thing known to man. We pulled up all like the YouTube videos where they're singing a song to the little kids saying, "You're king of the potty," and "Oh, you did such a good job," and this and that, and oh my goodness. And he wasn't having any of it. So it did get to a point where like I knew this boy knew he was smart. He had shown that he was smart from a young age. You're intelligent enough to know. You have the physical ability to do this now. Mm-hmm. You know how to use the body. Jacob, if you poop in your pants and you poop in your diaper one more time, I'm going to spank you. Okay. And he did. And I followed through and I spanked him with the wooden spoon. And he never again did that. And he always used the potty after.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying like make it be the first resort.
Hit your kids. No.
But I could have saved myself a lot of frustration had I, done it sooner. But, I'm trying to, again, we try our best as parents to be loving and be kind, but sometimes that rod needs to be used.
Well, and you tried to follow the overwhelming advice, the consistent advice among the professionals, about how to do this. And sometimes, they're not right.
And I think, of course, it's situational too. I mean, again, Sarah didn't need that,
Girls potty training were different.
Yeah,
but
and each child's different too. That's the thing. Like,
Jacob was just a
we were
stubborn
not
kid.
prepared for him.
No, we were not. If he was our first, he may have been our last.
You know what? You find what works. You have that relationship with God. I'm sure there was a lot of prayer going on during this time with you guys, and a lot of patience and long suffering with your kids and with each other and with the situation. So, those are godly things. We turn to God in situations like that, but you do what God tells you to do. And you're still walking in love. It's not a science, it's everybody's different. Our dynamic is different. Our relationship with the Father is different. Our, kids are different. The way we parent is going to be different parenting styles. And then the times are way different now than they were when we were kids.
Yeah.
And so we're battling with that. We can raise our kids according to the word all day long, and they get around the wrong set of friends and it's all out the window,
Yeah.
We just have to, we work really hard to, again, keep that honor, keep that respect for the principles and the truth that we've learned and that we've taught our kids, so that they have something to come back to if they do go astray, or they have something to measure it up against if they do get worldly information, and we teach them.
Absolutely.
It's the word of the world.
Well, they're certainly bombarded with it every day, the worldly views of things and how to be and how to act and all those kinds of things. The pressure on a young child and teen and all those things is very tough in comparison. Us being the first generations of internet and stuff like that, but still the influences that it had on us versus the influences that it has on them.
It's so immersive now. Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Thus,
thing. All
thus the
time.
reason that the word of God is so much more important than ever,
Mhm.
Yeah.
because it is that dividing of
Right and
the
wrong.
light and the dark.
Yep.
Yep.
Gotta have a
Cool.
standard. Woo. Well, that was a lot of information about moms and dads and honor, and we probably could have gone on for another couple hours, honestly, because there was a ton of stories I could have shared. But I think that my wrap up, if I'm going to say something, is just is just you just gotta have the respect for those parents that are in the Lord, because it says obey your parents in the Lord. God is holding the parents to a standard,
Yes.
and then the parents hold the children to a standard, and then out of a loving response, we have that relationship with, as adults, we have that relationship with our parents. So that's the honoring. And I know I have one parent left, and I honor the heck out of him. He and I did not have a great relationship with me growing up. We were very, it was me and my mom usually. My dad was just kind of the breadwinner on the outside. But the newfound respect that I have for him, and the love that I have for him, and the friendship that I have with him now, I wouldn't trade for anything. And I'm so glad it came at this later stage in life, because I have such an understanding of who he was as a parent to me. And I don't think I would have had that, even 20 years ago. So I'm thankful for my parents and for my Heavenly Father. John, what do you got?
Just again, going back to the respect part is a huge thing. And I mean, really, if you're considering getting into having children and being a parent, making a standard in which you can stand by, that you can show them when they're old to be able to read and see things, hey, this is not just my idea of how things should be. This is the way God intends it. And that might take some of the pressure off you as well, as in decision making, and showing the respect of the Father as well. That, hey, I'm honoring my Father,
Right,
my Heavenly Father, including my earthly parents. And I'm expecting the same from you.
Yeah.
I would say that we've talked a lot about honoring our moms and dads as adult children, and we didn't explicitly say it earlier, but these verses that say honor thy father and mother, they don't give a time frame. They don't give a you don't. So well, when
Until
you're
you're
18,
40.
you can stop, or when you're married, you can stop, or when you have your own kids, you can
Right.
stop. No, it is throughout our lifetimes.
Yeah. And again, for me, I'm fortunate and blessed, right, to still have my mom and my dad. And part of that too is, like, I don't know how many more years we have. Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 20? We don't know. So I just want to make the
most of it.
Make the best of it as while I have them both. And that was the really one of the driving forces. I'm like, we don't know how long we have, but want to have the best memories we can have while we have the opportunity, because we're all subject to mortality, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And as they get older too, there will be times where it will not be easy to honor your mother and father at times, in the respects of how much it hurts to just see them going through aging. But honoring them still the same, and keeping their level of respect and who they are, and lifting them up when they need to now, the roles start to reverse, and where you become a parent again to your own parents.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's really, again, thinking of, for them, that's all they could hope for, is that my children at one day will do the same for me, because I'm sure they did it with their parents too. And you saw that with theirs. And you're just continuing on. We're honoring. And again, our greatest example of Christ honoring the Father and doing the will of the Father, so that we all have the availability of everlasting life in salvation and grace with God. Thank God that he honored his Father so well.
Oh yeah.
And our fathers. Woo! So that's the Word with Friends podcast.
Great
We're so excited that
Word.
we got to talk and speak to you all. We really hope that you find your way. If you're not currently studying the Word of God or finding verses and stuff, we hope that this maybe opens doors or gives you some curiosity of what is it, where are they getting all this information and these principles and stuff. It is in the Word of God. It is there. It's a wonderful, wonderful book, a beautiful guide to our lives. And it is the Father truly, truly parenting us with such loving grace.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the Word with Friends podcast. I'm John.
I'm Beth.
I'm Laura.
I'm Brian.
And we will see you guys very, very soon.
Call your
God
parents.
bless you.
Call your parents.
Bye, guys. God bless.
Yeah. Love you.